felt like I just didn't fit in, and I often felt left out or excluded or ostracized. And I often wondered, what was it about me that was why I could not change that circumstance? Why could I not just fix myself to fit in more? I didn't really want to change who I was, but I also had so much trouble relating to and connecting with other people that I felt like something must be wrong with me. And very often growing up, I was called weird for being interested in things most kids my age weren't interested in. And it became quite frustrating at times. So it wasn't until last year in September that I was diagnosed with level 1 autism, which was formerly known as Asperger's syndrome. So before I continue, who here knows someone with autism? Okay, other than me, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, there are different forms of autism, in case you didn't know. I'm still learning about it myself, but I was diagnosed with it last September. And when I was diagnosed, on the one hand, I felt very relieved because it finally made sense to me why I didn't really fit in. However, it also brought up a lot of anxiety because I wondered what it meant for my future, and I was afraid of how people might unfairly stigmatize me and judge me who don't really understand autism or neurodivergence very well. And let's face it, we live in a very judgmental society and judgmental world. Our society puts a lot of pressure on us to conform and to be quote unquote normal, whatever that means. And nowadays with social media, I would argue it's worse than ever because we're under a lot of pressure to conform to whatever seems popular. I mean, with Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, we end up comparing ourselves to a lot of different people. And I was just telling a friend of mine this past week, I told him, I don't even know what normal is, to be honest with you. It can be very difficult to grow up and to try to fit in when you have a certain thing about you that you can't control that makes you stand out and makes you different from everyone around you. For some people, it could be their race or their ethnicity. It could be their sexual orientation. It might be their culture. For other people like me, it might be because they have a so-called disability. So while I was very self-conscious growing up, wondering why it was so hard for me to fit in, although I do want to say I was very blessed having the childhood I did still. Even then I had very good friends, very good family in my life, so I was still very blessed, but I was also very self-conscious. And at the same time, I was growing into my faith as a boy. I would go to church every Sunday growing up, and I still do. And I was always curious about God and about Jesus and what my faith really meant. I had the privilege of growing up in a really nice, welcoming Episcopal church in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I loved Sunday school, I loved reading the Bible, and I also enjoyed getting into discussions with my parents, with the small number of friends that I had, and other relatives about theology and about what the Christian faith really meant, even as far back as like 8 years old. I'm still figuring out to this day what Christianity is all about, and I'll continue to do so. But growing up, what I did learn that it's all about, and what I know it's all about, or what it's supposed to be about, is about Jesus Christ's commandment to love your neighbor as you love yourself, which was one of his two greatest commandments, and that's something I really focused on. The other commandment was to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And as long as I can remember, I've tried to think about what Jesus really meant by love your neighbor as you love yourself. I would argue some churches are better teaching the love your neighbor part than the love yourself part, and other churches are better at teaching the love yourself part than the love your neighbor part. The fact is, both of them are equally important, and Jesus commanded us to do both. Jesus never said to love yourself if other people love you or like you, or if you fit in or not. He never said to love yourself as long as you have no disabilities, or as long as you are a certain race or ethnicity. No, Jesus' commandment to love yourself is for everyone, with no exceptions. You love yourself because God loves you, and you're precious in God's eyes. And I'm very glad that I got to know this at a young age. And it doesn't mean that I think I'm better than anyone else. I mean, God created us and loves us all equally. No one is inherently superior or inferior. I don't think I'm better or worse than anyone else, but it took me years to actually internalize that, because growing up is hard enough as it is. I mean, trying to fit in is hard enough as it is. I would argue I've come a long way. I used to think, however, that to love myself I had to achieve certain things, such as earning straight A's in school, which I was under a lot of pressure to do up until a few years ago, or do some crazy athletic accomplishment like bench press 300 pounds. And I still have not bench pressed 300 pounds, just so you know, although I'm working on it. Maybe someday. So we often think, I don't think this is unique to me, I think a lot of us think that to love ourselves we have to achieve a certain thing, a certain objective, like, I don't know, like academic or athletic, or have a certain number of friends, something like that. But what I've come to believe over the years, and what I'm sure about, is that God created me for a unique purpose, and God created me to be unique, not to be like someone else or to accomplish things just because other people are accomplishing them. Now, that doesn't take away from the fact that it's good to set goals and accomplish things. I hope everyone here wants to do that. But we have to learn to embrace ourselves in the same way I had to learn to embrace myself for who we are right now, just as we are, and not wait for us to achieve something that we think makes us worthy, I guess. And my faith in God and in His love for me through Jesus Christ, that's my ultimate defense against self-hatred and self-loathing, which I think are two very major problems in our society today. And once again, I think social media is a large part of that. It seems as if people want to waste a lot of time and energy seeking to become like someone or some people so they can feel good about themselves, which I think is very sad, actually. It's really sad. And my main point here, my final point, is that we can live much happier lives, I think, if we're more secure about ourselves by reminding ourselves daily that we are children of God. not by reminding ourselves lies from society about what we should be like, because really our differences are beautiful whether they're validated or not, and our differences make us who we are. So that to me is how we can live a much more free life if we realize that. Because there's always going to be people out there, I've learned, who have something like certain personality traits or characteristics or looks that we wish we had. I still look at some people and I think I wish I could be like them, but I remind myself that God made me so I could be me, and God made you so you could be you, not so you can be like someone else. So that's pretty much the message I want to send